Hey there, RemPCs. Welcome to Rules of Cool, where we interview very special guests, creators, gamers, designers, and world builders. I'm your host, Rem, and today we're going to meet accomplished fiction and game writer Russell Zimmerman. And then stay tuned because up next at 5 p.m. PDT is the actual play of Shadowrun's Sixth World, Emerald Glitch. This week's giveaway is a pride pack of props from our own Jen Pauley and the Geek Forge. Type hashtag RemPC in the chat for your free entry to win. And for bonus entries, check out www.remalternus.com/Nguyen and patreon.com/remalternus. Your support helps pay our cast and crew, so we greatly appreciate it. Now, time to get right into our conversation for this week. So stay tuned, RemPCs. Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm here with my friend, Rusty Zimmerman, or Russell Zimmerman, as you can find him in the author world. Welcome, Rusty.
Hey, Sarah, how's it going?
It's going great. It's good to see you after such a long time.
Yeah, you too. We were just bemoaning that my wife and I missed out on some cons this year. So that was our cheerful talk right before the show started was, I miss you guys all so much.
It's our one time to have friends in person anymore. How times have changed.
Right.
If my mom knew how many of my friends were internet friends now, she'd be so disappointed.
so many strangers on the internet you've met.
So many. Well, I would like to introduce you to our audience. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
How's it going, audience? Like Sarah mentioned, most of the time when I'm writing, I go by Russell Zimmerman. So I sound a little bit less like someone's dog. But day to day and on lots of social media places, I go by Rusty. I'm very glad to be here. It's always a pleasure to hang out with my fellow geeks and to talk about cool geeky stuff. So I got here by way of meeting through freelancer friends and some other podcaster streamer types, but Sarah and I have gamed together. We have hung out on Twitch together, all kinds of good stuff. So when I got asked to be on the show, I of course leapt at the chance.
It's funny because you were part of that group that I met at conventions when I was just getting into Shadowrun, and it was like, those are the Shadowcasters, and that's Rusty, who's like the Uber author, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
I just ran into somebody that geeked out on Reddit the other day. I just popped into the Shadowrun subreddit and answered a question that somebody asked, and I was like, hey, here's this blah, blah, blah. And they answered me, and then like 5 minutes after their response, they were like, OMG, I just talked to a god. And I was like, all right, calm down. Like, it's nice to meet you, but it's okay, buddy. So yeah, it's that is never going to feel normal to me. And to an extent, I'm never going to stop doing that myself when I'm talking to Michael Stackpole or Jordan Weissman or somebody, Tom Dowd. I still geek out. So yeah, it's always kind of funny to me.
We're a passionate bunch, us gamers.
We are.
So let's kind of walk back through your history. How did you get started just getting into gaming?
Well, I first got into role-playing games actually on accident. I was a giant Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan back in the 80s, like all the cool kids were. And I had a lot of their comics and stuff. And my dad absolutely encouraged my geekery. Like, he's who I got it from. He's the one that took me to comic shops when I was a kid, stuff like that. And he found Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, which was a Palladium RPG using the same core mechanics as like rifts and stuff. And they had an original Eastman and Laird black and white comic in the middle of the book. Like literally in the center was like a 5 or 6 page book, or little comic, just a little bonus thing in this core rule book for the game. And my dad like literally just popped it open to the very middle and saw comic book and thought the whole thing was a comic. So he was buying me some trade paperbacks, and then I also got that. And then it turned out his girlfriend at the time, her sons were really hardcore into D&D and stuff. They were like 10 years older than me. I was 10 or 12, they were in college. But like when I was like, Dad, what the heck is this? Right? Like I kind of had some elder nerds to ease me into it. So I got to read TMNT and Other Strangeness and a ton of their spin-off products first. Like that was my introduction to RPGs.
Mhm.
But believe it or not, the first game I actually played was my beloved Shadowrun.
Oh, wow. So you went from TMNT into the crunchy,
Yes.
dark world of Shadowrun.
And the TMNT stuff is particularly crunchy itself. All those old school 80s RPGs have kind of lovable layers of statistics and monotony in them between you and the gameplay. So they were particularly fond of percentile dice in character generation in TMNT. So lots of random rolls in that one and all that. So yeah, but very different than the D6s that have always been at the heart of Shadowrun. So
And what edition did you start with?
Very first edition in Shadowrun.
Wow.
Very first release. I actually picked it up the Christmas of 1989, right? Like very end of the year. I was supposed to be Christmas shopping for other people in the infamous Florence Mall, which is beneath the infamous Florence Y'all water tower in northern Kentucky. And I went to the B. Dalton and the Walden books there, and I was supposed to be buying stuff for other people. And instead, I found Shadowrun, and I hid a copy of it. And I went back like a week later with Christmas gift cards that I had gotten, picked it up, and fell in love, just head over heels. Absolutely.
I love that. And I love the relatable, like as a kid being unwise in the holidays.
Yep. I was not budgeting my time well.
I would get, when they would bring vendors into a school, like an elementary school, so you could buy stuff for your family. And I'd always like pick out things I would like for my family. So like I got my grandpa a light up yo-yo.
Right? You're like, yeah, grandpa's going to love that. Oh, well.
And I can play with it whenever I want.
So it's the thought that counts, right? So, but yeah, I started with, very first core book, very first edition. The cover art, that awesome Elmore piece, was what got me. And then I opened it up to that intro fic and read it, just standing there in the bookstore. Keep in mind, like, this wasn't a Barnes and Noble, right? This was the olden days. And I just stood there and read the intro fic with Ghost, Dodger, and Sally Sung, my holy trinity, right? And I fell in love. So yeah, it's been a real kick to get to write them a couple times now too. So that's always a thrill, even these, 25, 30 years later.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So that was your gaming, and you just touched on writing as well. So how did you begin writing for RPGs after becoming a gamer?
The transition from gaming to writing games was actually also Shadowrun's fault. I played online on a bulletin board system called shadowland.org, right, which was the Shadowland used to be and still is, but it's not quite Jackpoint, the more modern one. But Shadowland bulletin board systems used to be the kind of cool underground Shadowrunner hangout in universe. And shadowland.org was just something I found doing a random search one day on, I don't know, Yahoo or whatever, because it was like 1997, right? Like it was a while ago. and I found Shadowland, and something had me hop on, and it was just a play-by-post kind of forum, basically, and I got hooked, and that's where I met my wife. So I got fond memories of the place, but I played on there a lot, and it's a really easy transition from play-by-post to writing short fiction. So I started to do little like background stories for my characters, and writing very short fiction about what they were up to in their downtime, in
Hmm.
between jobs and stuff. And then from there, I went to the Dump Shock forums, which are now largely defunct, but it was another just online site for Shadowrun chatter. And they were doing some fiction contests, some fanfic stuff. And I got into a couple fan fiction contests, and I just kept winning them, which was fun. It's nice ego boost, but it was just fun to have more people read my stuff. And then I transitioned from there to talking to the Shadowrun line developer, Jason Hardy. I literally just messaged him one day and said, "Hey, do you need any writers?" And he was like, "You're that guy that did these fiction contests, right?" And I was like, "Yup." And yeah, so that's how I got started with Shadowrun. Prior to that, I had done a little bit of war game work. My first ever professional work in the writing industry was for War Machine, a tabletop war game by Privateer Press. I wrote a couple magazine articles for them, and I got those gigs because I wrote fan fiction on their forum. I met their lead fiction guy at Gen Con one year. He was actually running the D&D third edition version of their RPG, the Iron Kingdoms RPG. He was running like demo sessions of that, and he saw my username on my Gen Con badge because I put my forum name on there instead of my people name, right? And then he geeked out, which was so fucking backwards to me. He was like, "Dude, we love your stuff around the office." And I was like, "What? Like, what?" So he got the lead editor of No Quarter Magazine, which was a bi-monthly magazine that they had, and might still have. I don't know. I'm way out of date with them, unfortunately. But yeah, so I ended up standing there, and all of a sudden, in the middle of just a normal Gen Con, which I'd been going to for 10 years or so by that point, I just signed up to play this game I liked, right? And suddenly I was talking to the fiction line developer and the magazine editor of War Machine, and I did a couple articles for them, and that's what had me feeling my oats and reaching out to Jason and going like, "Hey, what's up? This backstreet deal." Like, I opened a trench coat and I was like, "You want some short fiction, man?" And it turned out they did. So I wrote some intro fic for Attitude, and that was my first ever published Shadowrun thingamajigger. And then it just really, really, really snowballed from there into a bajillion other things. So yeah, but I got started just absolutely with fan fiction, both on the War Machine front and on the Shadowrun front. It was the fanfic that did it. So yeah, shout out to everybody that just writes for fun.
I love that. That's awesome. And one of my favorite things is that the gaming community is so small that you never know who you're going to run into at a convention and meet and start up these relationships, just from you being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and it feels weird to call the community small when we're talking about Gen Con when there's, I don't know, 50,000 people, but the community itself is still really small,
Mm-hmm.
especially once you start to freelance. If you are a decent person, like if you're just okay to get along with and you turn stuff in on time, you are accidentally networking, whether you know it or not. So the jobs just kind of start coming in after that. At least that was how it worked for me. If there's one thing that I've learned from years of talking about this, often on panels with other freelancers, it's that none of us do any of this the same. Our writing process is different. The creative process is different. But also how we got into it is different. But for me, I reached out the first several times just really randomly. I wrote a video game, you guys, because I messaged the dudes on Kickstarter. Shout out Satellite Rain, big cyberpunk game, came out with Five Lives crew several years ago, kind of a spiritual inheritor to the old Syndicate games, to my other old people in the crowd. And I wrote that video game because I didn't want to pay for the Kickstarter, but I wanted all of their things. So I literally just used like the contact us on Kickstarter. And I was like, hey, what's up? You guys need a writer? Right. and then yes, I wrote an award-winning video game, and part of my contract was literally, and give me one of everything from the Kickstarter. So that's why I have like a little Satellite Rain Lego and a t-shirt and all the rest of it, was because on top of the money, I had a writer in there that was, give me all your Kickstarter loot. So
I love it.
Couple of jobs. Yeah. Couple of jobs from reaching out to people, couple of jobs from just chatting with somebody, and a couple of jobs from a friend of a friend. In the years since then, it starts to get out of hand, and people will start, reaching out. Hey, we want to do a thing. You want to help us? Sure. So yeah, a little bit of everything.
We talked about War Machine. We talked about Shadowrun. We talked about the video game. What else have you written for?
Oh, okay, lots of stuff. I've done a bunch of Shadowrun stuff over the years. That's always kind of been my mainstream, but I've branched out in a lot of really fun directions. I got to write some fiction for Mutants and Masterminds. I'm in they've got a couple fiction compilations, but also the Nisaba Journal was how it's originally published. But I got to write some fun prose about superheroes, and that's interesting and fun. And it's another one where it's a role-playing game, so you're keeping the mechanics in mind. But yeah, superhero prose was neat. Speaking of superhero prose, I wrote in a project called Hellcats, which was actually really neat. It's a 69 author, which was just a coincidence, but it was a 69 author anthology that we all wrote as charity for this really nice old lady in Europe whose nephew was suing her to take her home. And a friend of mine that's in the writing industry reached out and was like, hey, we're looking for writers. So I actually ended up, the only theme we have is cats for this whole book. So there's some people writing about cats, some writing about cyborg cats in the future, some writing about the ghost of a dead cat, whatever. And I wrote about Cat Lad, a superhero that I made up in a superhero universe that I made up, who is fighting against the Womanagerie, which is a bunch of mutant felines that I made up. So it was just like, that was the cat story that jumped into my head, was some weird superhero stuff. So that's what I wrote. So yeah, I've done, that like cool charity anthology. I've been in some World of Darkness canon stuff, official stuff there, which is super cool, to late 90s Rusty, who was playing a lot of vampire and stuff. So yeah, I got to write for the Canite Conspiracies, Vampire Dark Ages anthology, and then Darkened Streets, which was a more modern anthology that includes some like mage and werewolf stuff. It's just general World of Darkness, but I did a vampire story there too.
Cool.
So yeah, some vampire stuff over the years, some Mutants Mastermind stuff. I wrote some stuff that I know Sarah knows about, but I'm not sure exactly where the rest of that project's at in publishing. So
yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
But go ahead.
I got to write a giant honkin' city, which was really cool. I'm scared I'm going to say it wrong because I always type it instead of say it, but Mayor Kuldashtra, I believe, is the pronunciation.
Yeah,
there we go. I was close.
So close.
Yeah, so that was really neat to try and go kind of old school with it. And I busted out like the old Waterdeep boxed set, right? And stuff like that, going back to like second edition D&D and trying to pull out some of that vibe. So it was really cool. It was actually my first D&D work. I know it's not like I was exactly writing for Wizards of the Coast or whatever, but it's the first straight up D&D style or D&D world that I've done. So that was fun.
Yeah, for those who have watched us before, we had Danny and Avon a couple weeks ago to talk about Coddlesworth's Clockwork Circus and the comic book, and Rusty was one of our stretch goals for that. So was writing the city that that the main characters go to in the first issue, and really fleshing it out and making it into a D&D setting that's going to be released on Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah. So that was fun, and it was neat because it was a different type of project than I've done before, and that's part of what I've tried to do with a lot of my new work is to I call it get an achievement unlocked, right? And just try to do something I haven't done before. So like right out of the gate with Shadowrun, I wrote adventures with Super Brawl Sunday, which was an urban brawl centric adventure that they did for missions at Gen Con. But then like the Elven Blood series of adventures, I did those. And then I did the Land of Promise setting ebook, and I did some mechanics with Way of the Adept. And that was all still 4th edition. That was 2 editions ago, but I was trying to just jump in and try to do different stuff and learn how it feels to write short fiction versus an adventure with all of those stats versus an in-universe setting book, which is what makes Shadowrun so fun sometimes, is most of the material is presented in universe and in character. So you can kind of play with an unreliable narrator a little bit, and you have these interruptions with commentary, and so that's very different than writing a third-person omniscient style setting book. And that's very different than writing whatever else. So yeah, it's just been cool jumping around. Some of my most recent, hey, that's different work was for Gangs of the Undercity. I know that Opti is a friend of the show, but yeah, I wrote an awful lot of the character write-ups and little like biographies for the individual miniature characters in that one. I also designed one of the gangs, Atari Forever, the Rocker Boy gang. And those were both new. I hadn't ever written a faction for a war game before, and I hadn't done that sort of core book individual blurb for a bunch of, I was going to say heroes. They're not quite all heroes, but yeah, that sort of work. So yeah, it's
achievement
fun.
Unlocked.
Yeah, exactly. And it was also kind of neat because I was circling back around to wargaming, which felt kind of fun, kind of back to how it started.
One thing I really enjoyed about you working on games too, from a distance, is you would post on, I remember you posting on Facebook, like which gang logo should be theirs, like, and kind of taking that like public poll and sharing what you're working on. And I thought that was really neat.
I do that, especially, of course, on my Patreon. But there's times that I've done like a poll on Patreon, and then I'll also post on Facebook and also post on Twitter. And like my Patreon backers count as like a whole third of the vote, so that the people that back me still kind of get a little more weight in my grotesquely imbalanced electoral college, But I just try to be really approachable and kind of interact when I can in places. I've written people from forums into novels before. The first time I did it, a dude shared a story about a really awful group that discriminated against him in Shadowrun. He was hosting people at his house to compensate for his disability so that he could stay at home and it'd be easier to take care of. And like he and his wife were providing the food and snacks while also hosting, which is all backwards to me. But like they were bending over backwards, and then people were complaining that he had to like go to the bathroom often because of his disability. And like it was so heartbreaking reading that story on the forum where he was just like, can somebody help me find an online game because I just got kicked out of this campaign. And it was like, all right, look, other people can help you find a game, but listen, my dude, let me talk to you about your character, please. And then I just tossed the guy in as somebody that Jimmy Kincaid knows,
That's awesome.
because that was part of the fun of Jimmy Kincaid Private Eyes. He knows all kinds of people, right? But I was just like, let me do this, man, to try and show you that the community does like you and the community does want you, So
that's
it's
really
fun.
sweet. And that kind of leads us right into my softball question here is what works are you best known for, Rusty?
Well, it's definitely going to be my Shadowrun fiction. Right now, most of that big Shadowrun fiction features my main man, Jimmy Kincaid. My most recent Jimmy Kincaid story, see if I can fix the glare, is this one called On the Rocks, which finally wrapped up the Jimmy Kincaid novel trilogy. But while the trilogy was in the pipeline, I got bored and wrote several spin-off novellas so they could all just kind of wedge in the middle of that nominally trilogy. So there's a couple spin-off ones, Adversary and Chaser and stuff like that they don't count. But yeah, so I've got a trilogy plus, let's say, of Jimmy Kincaid, hard-boiled noir PI, who is very much a loving homage to like Dirk and Wolf, from Nigel Findley's Dirk Montgomery stories and Michael Stackpole's Wolf and Raven. Those were just absolutely seminal works to me. And I always take it as just about the best compliment when people compare me to Nigel. He, of course, died tragically young after writing a ton of absolutely amazing stuff, and not just for Shadowrun, but especially for Shadowrun. But yeah, he was absolutely an influence on me in a lot of ways, including the source books he wrote, like the Tear Changer source book, right? So yeah, it's that vein of hero, and then a lot of stuff just kind of piles up on top of him and takes him out of his comfort zone of just being a noir PI. So that's been really cool. And Jimmy does also feature in my other most recent thing that I'm going to try and show off here again. And that is Shadowrun's first ever fiction compilation. This is Down These Dark Streets is what the book is called. And it's a collection of all of my short stories, just about all. There's a few that didn't quite fit in, but the intro fiction, that's the first thing I ever wrote for Attitude, is in there. Intro fiction for Shadowrun 5th edition is in there. The short stories that I wrote for Game Trade magazine, which were only ever available at Game Trade magazine, are now in there.
Oh,
so
cool.
it's the first time that Shadowrun has done that sort of collection, which was super flattering that it would be my stuff. I also crammed some extra crap in there because I had a couple things that were for projects that like got canceled and that sort of thing. And I just kept trying to like sneak them in with my editor. And I was like, hey, like we're really close to such and such a word count. I bet we could fit in one more. Right. And so like there ended up being like 3 or 4 new stories in there instead of one new story, which was supposed to be one. And I was like, no, more. So yeah, we crammed in as much as I could. Super, super cool to have that sort of collection. And I also did like commentary on each story and at the front of the book. So it was really neat to go back, and sometimes kind of horrifying to go back and look at stuff that I wrote like 12 years ago. And for a lot of them, it's like, ooh, I would not have quite written that the same way, but whatever. It was neat. It was fun. People liked it. But yeah, so I've got little kind of intros to each story, telling people kind of how it came to be, and what I was supposed to be writing instead when I made this story. So it was a really fun little project, and it was neat to compile that stuff. So definitely some Jimmy Kincaid stories in there as kind of the capstone, but it was also really cool to have all of my older Shadowrun stuff in one place, partially because I could show off a little with how much I tried to make all of my Shadowrun stuff connect. I tried to have like recurring characters in a lot of them. I firmly believe that, like the Shadowrun community, the shadows are big enough for everybody, but the shadows of any given city in Shadowrun are small enough that everybody should know everybody. And sometimes they should ruin each other's day on accident by taking opposing jobs, or taking a job that starts a gunfight that blows a thing up that causes a traffic jam that affects somebody else's story, right? Just I try to do little kind of crossover stuff like that every chance I get. So
You've
it's
done that, those little Easter eggs and stuff from what I remember hearing too with Earth Dawn, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I've snuck in a couple. My Earth Dawn stuff is not out yet. It is unfortunately in development hiatus, which is my fault. They want the whole trilogy of novels done before they publish them, so it's a little different than what I normally like to do. I often use the momentum of fan feedback to work on the next thing, and I don't have that, right? So it's my fault, not theirs. But yeah, I've got a couple times in Shadowrun that I've snuck in a tiny little Easter egg of Earth Dawn stuff to show that they are still connected, because they are. None of that stuff has been retconned away, despite the cluster frag of licensing and different companies and stuff. All the old connections are absolutely still canonical on the Shadowrun side. And I also specifically talked to both line devs and just was like, hey, and tactically it was after we'd had a few drinks at Gen Con. So it's like made it a little easier. But yeah, I had a couple items show up in some Shadowrun books that are pretty central to the Earth Dawn stories once they come out. And yeah, cool. So it's fun to just try and connect stuff and make it all feel a little bit more grounded to me. It makes it feel a little bit more lived in.
I like that. And I just thought of a question I'm going to ask you
Sure.
About a rumor I heard about you when people were pointing and saying, like, that's the legend. Okay. And so I think this is a rumor of one of your legendary acts of writing a novel in a weekend or something like that.
It was not quite a weekend, but it was a week. It was for a while I was a history professor. Shout out to Tarleton State University. And I was adjunct faculty, which is technically part-time, of course, just look at the pay, but also freelancing part-time. And it was really hard to do both, but I'm a lunatic and I love history and writing. So I was doing both. And I realized that the week after spring break, I was given midterms. So then I had to grade them all. That's the worst part about being a teacher, really. So I was going to have 200 some odd midterms to grade. And I kick it old school because I don't know how to work a Scantron machine. And we had like short essays and stuff. So I didn't, grading stuff took me a while. It was hard. So I was like, poop, I should really probably finish this before midterms. And then I did. I started it when spring break kicked off, and I sent it to my editor on the Thursday of spring break, and Dunsky. So yeah, that was, don't do that. That's not the good way to do it. But every now and then when my schedule permits, that's how I write stuff. I just kind of get in the zone and see my wife for meals, and that's about it, and just kind of hang out here at the computer and write an awful lot. Sorry, go ahead.
I think the rumor of the legend was far more dramatic, where you closed the door and only opened it to receive meals and go to the bathroom.
It's not quite that dramatic, but it's pretty close when I get going. I can say that every piece that I have written for a Shadowrun anthology, which is a couple of those that were on screen a minute ago. They're not all me. Some of them are anthologies. I've just got a short story in. But everything that I've written for a Shadowrun anthology, I wrote in one sitting, specifically on a Sunday afternoon, because we tended to get emails from John Helfer's Calling for Fiction on like a Friday. And I would think about it whether I meant to or not on Saturday night driving home from gaming, because I was all amped up. This was in the olden days when we got to game in person with people. Mm-hmm. And I would be driving home and I'd be all amped up from geeking out. And I couldn't help but kick around some story ideas while I was driving and while my wife was sleeping in the car, because we'd be up pretty late gaming, because otherwise what's the point in gaming?
Right.
And then I would write them on the Sunday afternoon before I had to like go back to work. So every single one of my little anthology pieces and a good chunk of my intro fiction was from remarkably productive Sunday afternoons.
Cool. Well, I'm going to pause real quick because one of the things that I wanted to do on today's stream is talk a little bit more about the giveaway than we usually do, because it's a little bit of a complicated giveaway this week. So you guys know Jen Pauley, who plays Violet in Emerald Glitch to follow this show. And she runs her own company called The Geek Forge. And I've interviewed her for Rules of Cool before. But she has donated a Pride pack for this episode's giveaway. And so that includes patches. I think there's an Anarchy patch or several Anarchy patches. There is a fire prop that actually I'm really jealous because I love her fire props. They look really dramatic in photos and are really great for cosplays. And I have one, but this one is a multicolored that you can like set it to different colors. You can have red, you can have multicolor, you can have blue, you can have green and stuff like that. And I'm very jealous. I don't qualify for the giveaway, but you do. So in order to qualify, you get a free entry just by typing into the chat #RemPC. And if you're very excited about it, which you should be because they're super cool, you can also go to remalternus.com/Nguyen. For every $5 you donate, you get an extra entry to win. And our top donors of every day can submit anything you'd like us to read at the end of Emerald Glitch for whichever player you want to read it. Usually people make me read puns because they love the pain that it causes and the rage within me, but that's entertainment, I guess. But so we've got some pictures here that Teslan from Tech have been showing of the giveaway. And because it's a little more complicated, I wanted to explain that a little more and give Rusty a chance to get a drink of water before I barrage him again.
I live in Texas. I need it sometimes. Sorry.
So getting back into it and kind of touching back on what we were asking with your best known series and stuff like that, for a brand new fan, what is the book to start with for Rusty?
Oh, geez. Honestly, I would go with Down These Dark Streets. The one that I mentioned a minute ago on accident, just because I wanted to show off that it's a hardcover, which is my first hardcover. I've got so that's fun.
Achievement unlocked.
Exactly. Like it's already cool when I get just a paperback instead of an ebook, but that one I actually got a hardcover. So that was pretty but yeah, if you want to get just a little taste of a lot of my different types of Shadowrun stories, that's definitely the way to go. And you can see who you like in there. And if you like the Jimmy Kincaid stuff, then it's real easy to segue into Neat and then into, the trilogy of novels and stuff. So that's all real cool. If a noir PI doesn't sound up your alley though, and if you're looking for a jump-in point that will not make you be behind other fans, my latest Shadowrun novel just released like a month ago, and it's called Blackbird 1, Base of Fire. And it's a brand new character, a brand new take on the setting. He is a young man growing up in the 2030s at the start, So the trilogy is taking you all through the Sixth World timeline and kind of showing off how messed up it is, right? And by being there in the middle of a lot of it. So it's a very different story. It's this first one in particular. He's grown up in the rural Cascade Orc territory out in the mountains. I was kind of pulling from some parts of my own childhood in the mountains of Oregon for some of this, pulling from my own time in basic training in real life. Shout out to Fort Leonard Wood. For part of it, it's just a very, very different Shadowrun story. So that one would be another cool kind of jump in point. If you want to jump right into new stuff, look for Blackbird 1, Base of Fire. If you want to look at my old stuff and see kind of how I've changed as a Shadowrun writer, then I would go with Down These Dark Streets.
Cool. Awesome. So we've talked a lot about fiction, but you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you, one of the ways we met was live streaming. So you live stream for actual plays. Can you tell us how you kind of started getting into streaming?
I do not remember. It was definitely just Opti or somebody from like the Shadowcasters network back in the day before it's, spread out now a little more. It was definitely one of those guys just asking me to be on the show and do some interview. And I said yes, because I try to say yes to every interview and thing. I think I've said no like twice ever. And that's because it was scheduling stuff, really, So I just try to be really approachable. And every interview I give is an opportunity to tell people how my idiot self just dumb lucked into this, right? and you never know what you can dumb luck into. So trip and stumble and follow your dreams, kids, right? But yeah, so I like giving interviews. It's a good time. So I did some interviews, and then from there, it's probably Opti's fault again that first asked me to do a game or something. So I just started kind of doing it that way. The game that we were in, of course, was Rockin' in the Weird West. And that one I just blame on Max and Cassie because they just straight up asked me at Gen Con. So that one, I know exactly who was to blame. But yeah, a lot of them, it's just kind of been a part of the freelance community being so small that everybody knows everybody, and it's real easy to start volunteering for stuff once you do so once. So yeah, I've been lucky enough to play in a bunch of really cool games. It was a long-running Earth Dawn game with some really cool folk. I'm currently still in some episodes of Shadowrun Origins that I know are still streaming. So yeah, just lots of fun opportunities to play with fun people.
I haven't said this publicly yet, but I think I'm allowed to now. Guess who's the newest cast member of Shadowrun Origins? I haven't built my character yet. So.
Yeah, chat has to guess, not me. I already know, but
you knew?
Yeah.
It's a small community.
Yeah, I mean, it came up in the conversations. I recently bowed out, but there is a backlog of my episodes awesome. Still coming. I'm moving in a couple of months, and I'm trying to cut back on some of my routinely scheduled things just to not be stretched too thin with the move. But yeah, it was a really good time playing some Shadowrun with some good people. So yeah,
definitely. It's a good group.
Yeah.
So what are you live streaming now? And where can we find it?
At present, the only thing that I am still shooting on a regular basis is actually the game that I run, which is maybe the world's longest running Song of Ice and Fire RPG. It's been going on for about 3 years now, all told, with a couple of delays here and there, but mostly we have been really, really on with every other weekend. But that campaign is also entirely up on YouTube. If you do a search for A Sea of Spears, you can watch my beard evolve for 79 episodes now, I think. So it has been going for a while. And we are definitely
really the best and only reason to watch Sea of Spears is the evolution.
that's the way to measure the what arc we're in, is what was Rusty's beard like for that stretch of campaign. But yeah, we're definitely in the kind of end game, and winding it down and kind of ramping it up at the same time in these last couple episodes. A lot of poop has hit a lot of fans, some big twists, some big reveals, some big plot stuff. So it's been a really good time. And it's my baby. So you can find my YouTube channel. The easiest way is just to do a search for Sea of Spears, and you'll find it there. Or you could start watching us play it live here on Twitch. My Twitch tag is Play the Game. You can find me here in the chat right this very minute. It's Play the Game with a 1 instead of the L, so that I'm one of those cool internet people. But you can find that, and we still stream it every other weekend. And yeah, that's the way to get it live instead of a couple days later on YouTube.
Awesome. So what is, just to kind of wrap up at the end of our episode here, I want to hear your favorite game story while playing Shadowrun, something that happened at your table that you're like, yep, this is the stuff of Legends now.
All right. First off, the coolest thing that's happened to me while playing Shadowrun, I got to mention it again. It's how I met my wife, right? So she's got to take the number 1 spot. And I was kind of because my character seduced hers. So we started hanging out more. My absolutely mundane elf lost his amnesia and learned that he was from the tier and that they might be after him. So he started hanging out at her house because she was the combat mage of our party, and we knew that her place was warded. So he wooed her with the first date, showed up with a box of flowers, and then a second box from the flower place with a combat shotgun in it that he had used the armorer skill to like gussy up for her.
Flowers and guns, the way to a woman's heart.
Yeah, everyone's heart. So because he like very ruthlessly seduced her to hang out with the party mage, initially it's grown since then, don't get me wrong, but we started interacting more in character and then hanging out a little bit more out of character, and then I feel like 16 years into our marriage, it's safe to say things have gotten a little serious since then. So that's got to take first place. But let's see, for just crazy over the top dice rolls, I've got 2 that I can share. One of them is a spoiler for Shadowrun Origins, though. So I don't know if they want me to do that one. But let's just say bad things happen to attack helicopters around my characters. It's happened 3 times now with 2 different characters. But the first one, and the one that I know is absolutely not a spoiler, is from Shadowrun 3rd edition, lo, these many moons ago. We were playing through the brain scan adventure kind of campaign, right? It's a bunch of connected adventures, one big arc. And we were playing through it with the like actual original Demon Seed Elite and Pistons, who were players on Shadowland.org that got into freelancing for Shadowrun. So if you see those names in old school Shadow commentary, that's them. Cool. And they also worked on some adventures. In fact, Pistons wrote the Tyr Tangier adventure in Corporate Punishment in 3rd edition. And that story was where this character of mine lost his amnesia. We tied it into this canon adventure. It was all really cool. So we were playing through these adventures with the people that wrote them, and they were messing with us by making them harder with like cut content and whatever. But I had a character that was a super duper long running Street Sam that kind of surged into being an adept when Surge hit and Haley's Comet. So he had some subtle adept stuff because he had a very low magic score that kind of rounded him out as a character. But his mega coolest number 1 moment was taking a Hughes Stallion heavy armored chopper out of the air with a single bullet from an Ingram Supermock, which was his token submachine, like his go-to submachine gun, his signature weapon. And he had one shot left in it and fired on semi-auto for a weapon that did 6L damage in third edition, which was like light pistol damage, right? Because it was just a submachine gun. It was mostly all about shooting extra long bursts. And yeah, one single bullet of APDS, so armor piercing rounds. I had leftovers because we used all APDS to go through brain scan because you're fighting so many drones. So yeah, I had one shot, fired one semi-auto shot, and just rolled so stupid well that I did full damage and took an attack helicopter out of the sky with one shot. So yeah, it was pretty dumb. If you've got a character that is super specialized enough in their favorite gun, and you've got that back in the day we had combat pool to just completely front load a die roll and make it really, really good, and then you roll well, you can do some crazy stuff. So awesome. A recurring trend of mine. The other two times happened in Shadowrun 6th edition. So I guess I gave helicopters a break for 4th and 5th. I tried to let them back off and leave me alone, and they just weren't having it. So then twice now in 6th edition, I won't say exactly when, so I'm not spoiling exactly Shadowrun Origins, but twice now, my character has soloed attack helicopters in Shadowrun 6th edition. So yeah, helicopters. Long-running feud.
They now fly scared of Rusty.
They should.
So, last question for you: where can we follow you to learn more and find more of your stuffs?
Absolutely. Well, like I mentioned, first and foremost, I'm here on Twitch with Play the Game with a 1 instead of the L. I used to stream PC gaming pretty often, but again, as we're ramping up towards this move, I've tried to cut back on my routine schedule. So I'm going to try and get back into streaming in a few months, but you can still use that for Sea of Spears, which again, also my YouTube channel, which is a mixture of Sea of Spears and the occasional Overwatch Play of the Game. So just general geekery there. But you can reach out to me on Facebook, where I'm rusty.zimmerman14. I guess there's 13 other of me running around. That was the official number to assign me. So I'm Rusty Zimmerman on Facebook. You can find me there. And on Twitter, I go by Russell Z. So just RUSSELLZEE, like spelling out the letter Z. So find the Russell Z there. Or you can catch up to me on Patreon, where my account name is Critias, CRITIAS. I just recently transitioned my Patreon over from a monthly to a per project bill, because again, I'm trying to cut down on my regular scheduled stuff so I don't overextend with the move and everything. But you get a honking ton of fiction and of game reviews and of character generation essays. That's kind of my favorite form of RPG review, is to try and look at an RPG through the lens of generating a character, and what that tells you about the game and stuff. So I've done some essays that are like that, and yeah, just a bunch of stuff on there. So my Patreon is again at patreon.com/Critias. We got the Twitter, we got the Facebook, we got that. It's just about everything.
Awesome. Well, Rusty, as always, it's just delightful to talk to you. And we should not wait so long before we do it again next time.
Absolutely right back at you. Thanks for having me. It's a good time. And again, just any chance I get to tell people how easy it is to kind of sometimes get your dream job, right? Like how you can just kind of luck into it by being passionate about it. Yeah, whatever your dream job is, go see if you can luck into it by being passionate about it.
Awesome. And thank you again for all the work that you do in the gaming industry and bringing our worlds to life.
Of course, it's hard not to love the games you write for. In fact, I think that's why you should. So all I'm ever doing with any job that I get is letting that geekery out and try to just share my love of a game with other people. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to get to do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. Stay tuned. We will be right back after this. Up next is Shadowrun's Sixth World Emerald Glitch and the Revenge of the Green Mansion. Don't forget that we have a wonderful giveaway of a Geek Forge Pride Pack of patches and fire props. Enter to win by typing #RemPC in the chat. You can get additional entries to win by going to our donation page at www.remalternus.com/Nuyen or patreon.com/remalternus. All donations help us to pay our cast and crew and keep producing content. And our biggest donors can have a message read at the end of the episode by the Shadowrunner of their choice. So check it out. And did you know that we have more shows like Shadowrun Emerald Glitch on our Twitch channel? We stream 5 to 6 days a week over on twitch.tv/masterofrem, including the Dresden Files RPG, Shadowrun 5th edition, and more. Check us out and give us a follow. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next time, where we'll talk with Emerald Glitch's own Randy Alvarenga, talented actor, live streamer, and gamer. So we'll see you next time, RemPCs.